Welcome into episode 171 of The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. I'm Ken Ray.
And I'm August Trometer.
Considering iCloud and end-to-end encryption, a WhatsApp bromance gone horribly wrong, and if you've got an iPhone, here's FIDO. What is that and why should you care? Find out on this edition of The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. I guess we knew that the data stored in iCloud didn't use end-to-end encryption. We knew that because when called upon by the courts, Apple turns data and pictures and messages backed up in iCloud over to authorities. And yet there was something, kind of like you'd been hit when Reuters ran a report Tuesday highlighted by iDownload blog saying the reason stuff on iCloud isn't end-to-end encrypted is because the FBI asked Apple not to implement end-to-end encryption for backups to iCloud. So iCloud backup is encrypted, but not end-to-end encrypted. Can you explain the difference?
We've talked a lot about encryption before. End-to-end encryption is where only you have the keys to decrypt your data. This means that you can encrypt something, put it out on the web, and it's just gobbledygook to anyone who tries to read it, though I don't recommend that. In HIPAA terms, we talk about data being encrypted in transit and at rest. And end-to-end encryption would be that it's encrypted in both places and only you have the key. In this case, Apple has the encryption key, meaning that anyone at Apple at any time can unlock your iCloud backups. So if they get a request from law enforcement, they can just hand over your contacts and all kinds of things that were on your phone. Worse, things you thought were always encrypted and safe from prying eyes, such as your iMessages, they still are, but since you've backed them up to iCloud and Apple has the keys to the backup, those aren't protected.
Well, okay, we'll get to that. Because they are, but they're not. I understand what you're saying, but according to iDownload blog, apparently the plan had been to implement end-to-end encryption on iCloud backups, though a former Apple employee that Reuters talked to indicates that the Cupertino tech giant was motivated to avoid bad PR and did not want to be painted by public officials as an enterprise that protects criminals. And that worked out great, because you never hear that from anybody. Like I said earlier, if we thought about it, we knew that this was the case, and yet somehow it does come as a surprise. At least, it did to me. I guess what I'm wondering is, does it come as a surprise to you? And if so, or if not, why?
I've been thinking a lot about this story. Either Apple is trying to avoid bad PR, like they got in the San Bernardino shooting case, or they're doing this because basically a lot of people forget their passwords. If it's to avoid bad PR, shame on them, because they've positioned themselves as the privacy company. More likely, it's because so many people try to restore from backups and can't remember their password. But I still say shame on Apple. If they have that information and anyone can look at it, it's not private. Either way, they've gotten themselves into a PR pickle, and hopefully it will be resolved soon. But the short answer to your question is, yeah, I'm really kind of surprised that Apple would do something like this.
Again, though, we should have known, right? Apple comes out all the time and says we turn over information to law enforcement if we have the information and law enforcement comes to us with the proper... Like if a court says you have to turn over this information, Apple is basically saying, how high? We knew this. There's just something about it being so black and white.
And, we assumed and assume is a bad thing in this case, but we assumed that they didn't have a lot of information that wasn't encrypted. So that's part of the problem.
Now, to what you were talking about a moment ago about updating from backups, Peter Cohen, managing editor of iDownload blog, actually wrote a separate piece about this, saying that this doesn't worry him because it's to his benefit and to your benefit, August, and to mine and to anybody who forgets their password. Pointing out that iCloud data is encrypted, Peter says the way it's encrypted, both you and Apple can decrypt it, like you said earlier. Apple will do so for customers who need access to their account and have lost it by other means. Apple will also do so for law enforcement officials who provide the appropriate request. Now, while Reuters and the secret sources with whom it spoke say the lack of end-to-end encryption for iCloud backup was about the FBI, Peter figures it's at least as much about us, if not more. We forget our passwords, lose our encryption keys, and we'll even get rid of devices and get new ones without remembering that we've turned on two-factor authentication. The way things are now, Apple can get us back into our stuff, despite how dumb we can be with our stuff. Quoting Mr. Cohen, unlocking an Apple ID account without the right credentials is not a trivial process, and I'd argue that it shouldn't be. It can take days for Apple to verify your identity before unlocking you. Apple's the gatekeeper, and at the end of the day, you have no alternative, outside of not using cloud services, but to trust them to hold your keys. Does that seem fair or unfair?
Can it be both? You're right. We all forget passwords, but I still think it's a dangerous precedent saying all your data on your iPhone is safe. But if you did a backup, anyone can look at it.
So what Peter argues in his piece is that Apple should offer end-to-end encrypted backups for people who feel like they need them. But he says he thinks if you ask the average Apple user, would you prefer to have a more secure backup or a backup that Apple can help you recover if need be, the average person will favor the latter more than the former. Of course, if you've got a Mac, encrypting your iPhone backup is easy without having to pose that question, I guess.
Yeah, if you have a Mac and you want to make sure no one has access to your iPhone backups, back up your iPhone on your Mac. You can use the settings to make sure that the backups are encrypted. And, I hope you already have File Vault turned on. So that's an additional layer of encryption.
Yeah, what stings is I hope you had File Vault turned on when you first started using your Mac. Because it's easy then, right? If you turn on File Vault later. Because I remember when I learned about that, I was like, oh, I should do that. And then it's like, 5 hours later or something.
Right.
Encrypt it. Remind people, by the way, because it's been a while since we've talked about it, what is File Vault? I mean, they can probably pick it up just from, context, but a quick refresher, if you will.
File Vault encrypts all of the data in your account, or on the entire hard drive, for that matter, if that's what you want. It's a great way to make sure that if you leave your device somewhere, no one's going to be able to pick it up and access that data through some means of accessing the hard drive unless they have your password or fingerprint.
So you can still use an iPhone, you can still use a Mac. You don't have to worry about Apple being able to get into those things as long as you're not backing everything up to iCloud. I mean, we love the convenience of iCloud. That's the thing. But with that convenience, unfortunately, comes... See, here's the thing. I don't even want to say a loss of security, though, because you and I have talked 1,000 times on just this show about, you trust Apple. Because we do. We trust Apple with our banking information. We trust Apple with our health information. We trust Apple with our stuff. I'm curious, and we don't have an answer, but let's go back really quickly to Peter's supposition. You put that question to people. Do you want a rock-solid backup that nobody can get into, or a slightly less solid backup that only you and Apple can get into? If you put the question to people, do you think they would actually choose, I want to be able to phone a friend, the friend being Apple, to get me back into my stuff if I'm dumb and lock myself out? Or do you think people would opt for the, ironclad backup solution? Or do you think it depends on how you ask the question? I
think it depends on how you ask the question because, you're your question right there was, would you like a slightly less secure backup that only you and Apple have access to? But the real question is, would you like a less secure backup that you, Apple, and anyone gives access to has access to?
Yeah, well, that's true. But I guess it depends on how you spend it. And again, it does also depend on whether you trust Apple or not. I'll tell you, this whole thing reminds me of a story that came out of CES a couple of weeks ago. Apple privacy executive Jane Horvath indicated that Apple was using something like photo DNA to scan pictures being uploaded to iCloud, checking them for images of child exploitation, and then, taking the appropriate action. So nobody is seeing the pictures initially, but if they get a ping, if they get something that looks like, well, this is actually, really, really harmful, then they're reviewed. And if they prove to be illicit, like I say, action is taken. I'm okay with that as stated. The problem that I have is it doesn't really seem to have been stated. And I'm wondering if that's part of the problem that we're coming up with now.
On the surface, I'm okay with that too. But you also have to remember the hacking scandal of a few years back where celebrities were taking nude selfies and those got leaked on the web because somebody was able to hack their email account.
Boo, that was not hacking their email account. That was phishing. You know that.
Yes, but I'm saying that those photos would be scanned also. And Apple employees would have access to those. Maybe they wouldn't get a ping, but there could be a guy sitting in a cubicle somewhere who is just sifting through that stuff.
I have a problem with what you're saying there. Forgive me, because as I understand it, the way photo DNA works, there's not a person who's actually looking at anything. If they get a ping, then it's made available. I mean, again, we always upload our photos. We don't always do this, but a majority of people upload their photos to iCloud, right? So they can have access to them in other places so that I don't have to actually work to transfer my photos to my Mac. I take a picture on my phone. It shows up on my Mac. That's iCloud at work. I mean,
and it's super convenient.
It's super convenient.
It really is.
Right. And nobody is looking at those. I have to believe that nobody is looking at those because I have to believe that because I have to believe it. I mean, at some point, one of my favorite lines from the movie JFK, I love this, was one of the guys says, how do you know who your daddy is? Because your mama told you so. I mean, at some point you got to trust, right? I mean, and maybe that's a ridiculous thing to say on this show, but you're making it sound like there's somebody sitting there watching every photo that's coming into iCloud. I would like to believe, I would certainly hope, and maybe this hope is misplaced, but I would like to believe that actually Apple employees can't get into my photos unless A, federal judge comes, or state judge or whatever, comes and says, I need to see that guy's photos, or B, something bordering on AI looks at a picture that I've taken, says, wow, that looks dangerous. I am actually going to have, somebody look at this now.
I would like to think that too, but I'm a firm believer that if you put $100 bill on a table in a room full of 10 honest people, sooner or later that $100 bill is going to disappear. And I'm not saying that employees have access or are reviewing these as they come in. I'm saying that if somebody wanted to, they might be able to. And that troubles me.
Well,
that said, to answer your question, Apple needs to be very clear about what they're doing with your data, whether it be AI scanning, or anything like that. They need to be black and white, and it can't be buried at the bottom of a 90-page terms of service form.
I agree with that. I feel like, I don't know, it also can't be a 10-page open letter on their website. It almost needs to be a video thing that Tim Cook sits there, looks straight into the camera, and says, here are some of the concerns that have been raised. Here is what we're doing, and here's why. And if you don't like it, I don't think he probably shouldn't even say, here's what you can do to avoid it, though, because then you do have people saying, well, they're just telling criminals how to do it. Not like criminals won't find out, but
Right.
This is going to be an ongoing conversation, I can tell. I'm honestly surprised at the way it went now. But we got other stuff to talk about. So let me say really quickly, neither the FBI nor Apple offered comment for the Reuters report. And I don't know if this story takes hold, and news cycles being what they are, this could be forgotten in 24 to 48 hours. If it does take hold, though, one imagines that Apple will issue some sort of statement in the coming days. No less scary, but twice as weird. This story is so freaking strange. I don't even know how to approach how weird this story is. The Guardian out of the UK says, this just sounds like something you'd write. Says Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman sent Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos a video that ended up infecting Bezos' phone and stealing a bunch of info on it. Actually, I shouldn't say it infected his phone. It did, however, steal a bunch of info on it. Not like, Mohammed bin Salman ordered somebody to do this. It looks like, or at least it appeared, apparently, to Bezos, like, Mohammed bin Salman sent him something and he clicked on it. According to The Guardian, the Amazon billionaire Jeff Bezos has his mobile phone hacked in 2018 after receiving a WhatsApp message that had apparently been sent from the personal account of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, sources have told The Guardian. The encrypted message from the number used by Mohammed bin Salman is believed to have included a malicious file that infiltrated the phone of the world's richest man, according to the results of a digital forensics analysis. So, there's Bezos, just, guy being a dude, messaging his friend, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and his friend sends him a message like, OMG, is this you in this video? Which we all learn not to click on, because The Guardian says analysis found it's highly probable that the intrusion into the phone was triggered by an infected video file sent from the account of the Saudi heir to Bezos, the owner of the Washington Post. Like I said earlier, I don't even know where to start with this. I guess let's start with the mechanics, though. This is believed to have started in WhatsApp. Is this, I don't know, is it naive of me to think that that app would do some sort of antivirus or anti-malware scanning to keep bad people from being able to do bad things?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that none of my royal friends have ever sent me a virus. So what a jerk.
Do they send you fun videos you want to click on, though?
Well, I have no royal friends.
Oh,
so.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think it's a bit naive to rely on WhatsApp to have some sort of malware scanner. That's not really their business. But this incident might make them start to do a little file checking before sending things along.
Here's what, there's just so much about this that I don't get. You don't think about all these people being in the room together. Apparently they met at a party that also included Disney CEO Bob Iger, and I can't remember who else, but there were a bunch of people. You just don't think about it again. Hey, you want to exchange numbers? Says the crown prince of a country to the CEO of one of the biggest retailers, if not the biggest retailer on the planet. Now, a piece from Business Insider wondered whether the Israeli cybersecurity firm NSO Group was responsible for this. What do we know about them?
Man, where do we start? Because this gets really complicated. So I'm just going to try and make it a little simpler. The NSO Group has sold software that hacks phones using WhatsApp before. In fact, they're connected with the alleged Saudi assassination of Jamal Khashoggi, the Washington Post reporter. NSO, of course, has denied this. But Facebook, the owner of WhatsApp, has sued NSO for exploiting WhatsApp and sending malware to over 1,400 people in order for governments to spy on those users.
A couple things worth noting. Bezos owns the Washington Post. Not that has anything to do, not that what happened with Bezos has anything to do with what happened with Khashoggi. Although the supposition is that the Crown Prince was trying to get something over on Bezos so that the Washington Post would maybe be a little more favorable in its coverage of the kingdom. We should also point out that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has denied any involvement, saying on Twitter that the reports suggesting that the kingdom was behind hacking Bezos' phone are absurd. They're calling for an investigation on the claims. Here's what I'm wondering, because at the end of the day, August, it's all about me, for me. Just as at the end of the day, it's all about you for you, and everybody listening, it's all about them for them. Not that we're selfish, but, we have to watch our own backs. How safe are we? And what can we learn from this? I mean, let's start first with the video sent through WhatsApp and other messaging apps. How dangerous is or are things like that?
Well, we're obviously a lot less safe than we thought. But this is sort of the old malware in an email trick.
The old malware in the email trick.
Exactly. But since NSO is allegedly exploiting vulnerabilities in WhatsApp, I think some of the blame rests on the shoulders of our favorite punching bag, Facebook, since Facebook owns WhatsApp. What it comes down to is never accept or open anything you don't trust. The fact that this video came from a prince is really strange, and I'm sure Bezos trusted that individual. But to be safe, don't open attachments, downloads, videos, or anything from people you don't know or trust. And if it's on your Mac, use a good malware scanner.
Now, I had planned to ask whether this was actually an iOS versus Android thing, though it's since come to light that Bezos' phone was apparently an iPhone.
And I think this does highlight some security holes in iOS. For a video file to have such wide-ranging system access is pretty alarming. There are probably a lot of conversations going on between Apple, Bezos, and Facebook right now trying to figure out what happened and how to fix it. And this probably was platform specific. Bezos was obviously targeted, so the hackers determined what phone he had and introduced malware just for that phone. I'm sure if he had an Android phone, the same thing would have happened, but the video would have been tailored for the Android platform.
I do kind of like the idea, and I know you're right, he was targeted. I do sort of like the idea. It's like the person I was talking about on this show a week or two ago who, like, every 6 months I get some sort of spam email. I like the idea that the Crown Prince is like, oh man, did that go to everybody? I feel so terrible. I should never have clicked on that. It's good to bring levity into, the end days. Fidelity, security, scruffy. What is FIDO, and how did you end up with it? We'll find out in a bit, but first a word about MacScan 3 from Secure Mac. Macs are all over the place. More people using more Macs means more personal information, more medical information, more financial information, more of our lives living on the Mac. You know it, I know it, and bad guys know it too. That makes each Mac a tempting target, and that makes protecting your Mac very important. Protect yours with MacScan 3. MacScan 3 is a great defense against malicious software attacks aimed at your Mac. It's developed by Secure Mac, trusted names in computer security and developers of exceptional security software for over 20 years. MacScan 3 detects and removes Mac malware, catches keyloggers, removes tracking cookies, and provides full-range or targeted scanning, all without crowding up your hard drive or slowing down your computer. Surf more securely with MacScan 3. Sign up for a free 30-day trial today at securemac.com/MacScan. That's MacScan 3 by Secure Mac. Your 30-day free trial is waiting at securemac.com/MacScan. Hey, you know what we haven't talked about in a while?
Wallabies?
Well, we've never talked about wallabies. No, I was thinking two-factor authentication. I mean, we mention it almost every show, but we haven't done a story about 2FA in quite a while. But Google made a change recently that piqued my curiosity. According to a piece from Apple Insider, following an update to Google's iOS Smart Lock app, iPhones can now be used as a Fast Identity Online, or FIDO, security key. Now, I like the name because I like dogs. But what, I wonder, is FIDO in a technical sense?
Well, FIDO stands for Fast Identity Online. And it's essentially a security key used to unlock websites. In the past, browsers have needed a USB dongle of some sort, but this allows you to use your iPhone to provide that key, which is pretty cool.
Now, Apple Insider says the change means your iPhone replaces the physical hardware keys previously required and brings the iPhone into line with Android phones. So basically, Google's finally gotten around to building into an app that it builds functionality that it had already built into an operating system that it builds. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. They've allowed this on Android for about a year, and now it's available on iOS. But it's only good when you're using the Chrome browser. It won't work with Safari.
Now, I'm a little bit confused by this because I've got Google Authenticator on my iPhone. What's the difference? I mean, both technically and functionally between, that thing that I've been using for years now and FIDO.
The difference is that FIDO is like a physical key, something that you have that you can use to unlock a door. Authenticator is sort of an automated way to provide you a code for a keypad lock, and it switches that code every time you use it. Both are effective, but using FIDO with your phone is a better user experience, and because it's all tied in with iPhone Secure Enclave, it's more private and secure.
Do you know how FIDO works? Because that's the thing I'm confused by. Like when I had RSA, when I worked at a call center a million years ago, I mean, I had a thing. It was something I had, but it was flashing up a code that I had to punch in. So
it's very similar to that. Yes.
Okay. So, which is very similar to Google Authenticator.
Yes, except this is a lot more automated with FIDO on your phone. Your phone just has to be near the computer.
So that I can see the number and type it in? Or is okay.
It's just all Bluetooth.
Okay, that's the part I was missing. All right, so this is practically like Wave to Pay or Apple Pay or something like that.
It seems to be, yeah. That's why I think it's very cool.
All right. So then who's this for? I mean, is this something that, like, okay, I like that idea. I like the idea that maybe instead of every time I log into, one of my accounts for which I have 2FA set up, my phone's right next to me, so it's going to be fine. I mean, is this something that I can do? Or is this something where an employer or an organization says, this is what we're implementing, no new hardware required?
Well, right now, the real use of this is somebody who is really high profile or has really sensitive data on their Google accounts, because it seems to only work with Google accounts right now. My question is, why is anyone storing really sensitive information on their Google accounts? But that's a whole different question. That said, if companies use a lot of Google Docs or Calendar, for example, and they don't want that information exposed, it was very expensive to provide all of their employees with a USB dongle. So this lets companies with a bring your own device policy avoid all of those costs, which is nice. And like I said, it's a better user experience. Other online companies may jump on board to support this. But it's just nice to see progress being made in the way of data security, no matter where it's being stored, even if it's with Google.
That is nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
I didn't want to end on a down note. I didn't want to end with, hey, a world leader is targeting the richest man in the world. That seemed like it'd be kind of a downer. So yay, security. Hey, if you're looking for more security news and how-tos, the place to look is securemac.com/checklist. There you'll find notes for this show, for the last show that we did, all the shows we've done, all the way back to the first one. securemac.com/checklist. If you have a question you'd like to ask or a topic you would like to hear us hit, our email address is checklist@securemac.com. That address again is checklist@securemac.com. And if you can't remember that, please do remember this. You're listening to The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. And we'll talk to you next week.